Hey everyone, I am back with another fanfic reading. Sorry I haven't done one in a long time, but let's get this started. Chapter 1 of Awoken. What causes have I to feel glad? I've built my life on judgment and causing pain. The revelation had come to me rather spontaneously. A mere second ago, I'd been smiling at the ceiling, musing over the fact that I was one very lucky pony. I was alive. For starters, I was alive, and not down in the gloomy depths of the Rainbow Factory. Shivering with fear and cold, pressed between panicked fillies and colts choking on the gloomy and oppressive misery that seemed to hang about its perimeter around the clock. But at what cost? The smile had left me. Then it was that notion, a simple self challenging question, which had suddenly made me feel insecure. Deeply perturbed, I let my mind wander idly, searching in vain for something that I could use in the defense of my reasoning. I thought back, way back, to the very beginning, when, like the new herd of flight school flunkouts that arrived every few months, I stepped hoof in the ominous basement of the Rainbow Factory. For the first time, I try my best to black out the screams, but they're haunting me in my dreams. Please break my shackles. I want it to stop. It was dark down there. I had been lost to something far past fear. I'd been petrified. Around me, like cattle to the slaughter, the flunkouts of flying school were being herded from the cramped hallway and out underneath the large domed roof. The air had been stale and stagnant. The metallic ting of blood, heated sweat, and bitter fear all came together at once to lace the still air. Screams of misery echoed off the concave roof, mixing with the whimpers of panic from my fellow failed classmates and the industrial noises surrounding us. Caught up in the flow of shuffling pegasi, I too had been pushed out of the hallway and into a bigger room with the domed roof. The first thing I noticed on entering was a large machine, a cylindrical at the bottom, but then tapering off far above my head. The stout top of the giant machine was surrounded by a gangplank, one which circulated around the machine once and then headed off in different directions. Assembled now with the rest of the herd, my gaze had followed along the audiences, up to the side of the contraption. Up the circular gangplank, for a single moment there had been silence, or more than an absence of voices, where only loud clang of hooves on a metal could be heard. And then she appeared. At the time, I had no clue of the gender simply because the trim Pegasus above us had a full bodysuit on and a hood to match. For a few seconds, the Pegasus on the gangplank looked amidst the audience. Then she had spoken. I remember very clearly the first time I heard her voice. It was rough and authoritative, vigorous with young and stubbly the drive to control. She given us a lecture on how worthless we were, the lowest of the low, the failures. and then she pulled back her hood. When I had seen the scion face behind the masquerade, the flowing rainbow mane, a single thought raced through my mind. To this day, I remembered it. Was that Rainbow Dash? Rainbow Dash, the filly. Rainbow Dash, the loved one. Rainbow Dash, the head of the weather control. Indeed it was. At the point in time, my confusion had been the same as every pony else. It was when she kindly treated us with an example that my confusion gave way, again to fear. The sort of fear one might feel when they were all alone in that ever-free forest, surrounded by flickering shadows and noises, chilled to the very bone. I clearly remembered the mood of the crowd as one of our ranks was secluded and tied up with a set of chains that had descended from a pulley system above the machine. It was total panic. We had to get out. But where could we run? Where could we hide? The hallway behind us had already been excluded from the chamber by a set of sturdy wooden doors. I remember clearly having to sit there, unable to help, frozen in panic and despair, as that orange-colored Pegasus was pulled up into the sky-given one, last chance at being off the ground. For a moment, the colt had hovered over the top of the machine, wings fluttering in a manner that projected his burning desire to get away. He'd been struggling terribly, screaming for help, screaming at whatever he saw. At the bottom of the structure, it had been probably the darkest minute of my life. Then, and the longest. My jaw had gone slack and my heart had begun beating as fast as the changeling Pegasus wings. And then it happened. The thing that both scared me beyond repair and filled me with something stronger than hate. The chains began to pull their captive in all directions, splaying his four hooves painfully apart. Then they began to twist as if attempting to wring him out. Quickly the hollers of panic from the Pegasus turned to screeches of suffering as pain washed over him. A loud cracking noise, and then it was over. The chains have broken his ribs, leaving him looking very similar to a rag doll. With a hiss of the clamps around the orange Pegasus's hoofs opened, he fell lifeless into the top where his convulsing body remained till it was grinded down into a bloody pulp. A humming had started up in the body of the machine, turning of the gears, an occasional puff of steam. My attention had been drawn down to a tube off to the side. It had been orange. If I remembered correctly, I accompanied 6 others, red, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, the colors of a rainbow. After a bit, and to the audience's horror, 3 of the 7 began to vibrate profusely. Then gradually a flow of according colors were spewed out into a dozen medium-sized vats. When the vats were full, a group of younger Pegasi about my age at the time shuffled out from the shadows and took them away. What came after the demonstration was nothing short of a panic. The audience erupted, some flying into the air, others just straight out trotting, all looking for an exit, all failing in the end. Soon the riot had been returned to order. Broken, hollow, I think it was about then that I realized that there was no glimpse of hope left for me. I am sick of hurting, sick of thinking. It's all I can do. I break those around me, those spared. are very few. I rolled over in my bed. My head was buzzing again, and my downy mattress had acted like a sponge. I was wallowing in my own sweat. The origins of my experience in the Rainbow Factory were nothing to be happy about. That period of time had really bucked me in the head. I gazed dully at the papers up on the wall of my bedroom, the tally chart, the statistics page. It all came to me in high resolution. Murder to me had become a statistic. I realized something to be tallied and occasionally bragged about. To this day, I had directly partaken in ending 74 lives. The bloodstains no longer washed away from my hooves, no matter how hard I tried. I manned these wretched machines, day in, day out. The grinding wears on my brain, undermining my sanity, makes me question my reality. Somehow it happened. I didn't die. When all the odds were stacked against me for weeks, after my initial arrival to the Rainbow Factory, I was not picked to be drained. My jobs were many and gruesome. Cleaning up the excess blood that would overspill as the machine grinded up these victims, transporting the filled spectra vats to the holding chambers, cleaning out the grate where the excess body parts went. Not nice stuff to say the least. When I was on the floor, I was in the holding chambers. Ironically enough, it was because of my containment in those filthy cells that I eventually ended up gaining my freedom. Let me explain. Though I've never been told, I imagine that the reason why I ended up being drafted into the permanent working force of the Rainbow Factory was due to my aggressive nature, amplified 100 times due to the living environment. At first, I fought only to defend myself and the food I was eating, but then I began to fight for the sake of fighting. I found that the longer I remained in the damn building, the angrier I got. Unable to take my raids out on any pony, the pressure just kept building up until one dreary day, I blew up. I really hurt a younger mare. I practically lost all my friends, and then, and around that time, my wits as well. I had manifested into a monster. I started finding relief in harming others. At first, it was minor fights. Throw $2 and then call it a night. But then it turned into something more. Along the lines of brawling, I approached the weaker ones and beat them up, make them suffer in an attempt to duly my own misery. Many tried to flee. I wouldn't let them escape till they were bloody and begging. The ones that I fought, me suffered even worse infliction. One day, while I was on the factory floor, I killed a pony. It was my first murder. I clearly remembered how the fight went. I was working with another Pegasus on moving some freshly squeezed batches of spectra to the holding chambers, and she had slipped on something, spilled the vat of indigo in the process. The commotion would have definitely put me next in line on the chopping block. The fact that after all this time I'd be killed because of a stupid mistake drove me rapid with anger. Well, that is chapter 1, and I will be reading the next chapter in a few. Catch you later.